Hi and hello, Watch fans, and welcome to another edition of the Real Time Show with me, your friendly neighborhood watchmaker, Rob Nuds, our friendly neighborhood jeweler, Alon Ben Joseph, and our friendly marketeer, Theo de Turkheim of Micromilspec, but of incredible reputation that stems far beyond his years. Hi, Theo. Nice to welcome you to the studio.
Hi, guys. Thank you very much for having me. Really looking forward to this.
Do you reckon you're going to be able to live up to that introduction now?
Probably not. I mean, I was born as a disappointment because my mum was expecting a girl and I came out as a boy, so I'm used to disappointing.
Oh, well, you're a very elegant man. I'm sure she wasn't too disappointed.
No, I caught up eventually.
Jolly good, jolly good. So, for anyone that doesn't know Theo, he's been around for quite some time. I guess this is, 7, 8 years in the industry, is it?
Yeah, overall, I think I'm at 8 now.
8 years, wow, okay. And it's flown by, no doubt, because you've been a busy man. As I mentioned off air, I think I've had more emails from you in my inbox than anybody else over that 8-year stretch. And it didn't begin with Micromilspec, because 8 years ago, Micromilspec was a twinkle in the eyes of the founders. In fact, back then, Theo was working for one of the biggest, most recognizable brands in the world. And we'll start there, if you don't mind, Theo. How did you find yourself working for IWC?
Yes, I mean, my background originally was in hospitality. And after doing that for 8 years and working 100-hour weeks and barely having a holiday, I was just said I need a change. So I left hospitality and, like most people in their mid-20s, I was trying to find something to rebound in. And my brother came up to me, who was the brand director of Longines at the time for the UK. And he said to me, mate, why don't you try and watches? You work less hours and get paid more. And I was like, he had me at more money and less hours. So he proposed that I should have a look at IWC because a friend of his at the time called Amy Turner was looking for a CRM manager or a PR manager. And originally actually applied as a CRM manager. And after speaking to Amy a little bit, she was like, buddy, you are not at all a numericals data guy. You will absolutely fail at this part. So she was like, how about you tweak your CV, reapply, and I'll give you a go for the PR manager and get you through the rounds. And that's pretty much how it all really started. So I got my job pretty much being underqualified and based off a cool story about me being knocked out by a female boxer. And that's how I got the job, really.
All right, so we haven't got all the hours in the world, but we've got enough time to hear this story about you getting knocked out by a female boxer. Come on, spill the beans.
So they said, tell us a story that where you learned something. And I said, well, keep in mind, I was being interviewed by two ladies at the time. And I said, well, the biggest story I've ever learned or the biggest experience I've ever learned was never underestimate a lady. And she was like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, well, I signed up to a boxing class I think it was around Vauxhall area. And a lot of the people in that boxing gym were semi-pro amateur fighters type of thing. And at some point they got told, that we got told to pair up with one another. And I could see these like bricks of men staying away from this tiny girl. And I was like, okay, maybe they're trying to, avoid hurting her or anything. So I very politely just said, happy to spar with you. Please, don't worry, I'll go easy. And we go into the ring, they ring the bell, throws one punch, lights out. I have no idea what the hell is going on. I wake up with blood coming out of my nose. And I found out she's actually an actual amateur fighter who was preparing for a tournament in 2 weeks' time. So that was my first and last attempt in boxing. And based off that, that's how I got started at IWC.
Oh, she must have been so disappointed. She needed a good warm-up, and instead she got you.
Yeah. Oh, mate, I swear to God, I've never felt so much pain in my nose. It destroyed me.
Do you remember how she knocked you out? Was it a jab, a hook? I mean, I guess it wasn't an uppercut. She hit you in the nose.
No, it was two punches, man. She jabbed and hooked me, and the jabs pissed me, like literally started pissing out blood. And I think that the hook was just right on the button. And when I got called out, the head trainer of the boxing gym, was like, "Oh, mate, I thought you could box." I was like, "This is my first freaking class. What do you think? I was like, what were you expecting? Mike Tyson? Oh, like, not a chance, mate. Eric the Eel in the boxing gym."
Oh my God, what a vision! I mean, that's a brilliant story. And did she go on to any great success, or were you just cannon fodder, as it were?
I was pretty much cannon fodder, but she also got a national title.
Oh wow!
Yeah, she wasn't bad. I don't remember at all what her name was, probably because of the punch, and it was over 10 years ago. But at the time, I remember because actually I'd been going to that gym for a third time even after the punch, and she brought back the title and hung it up in the gym for all the students around to see, that the trainers were pretty decent.
Well, good on you for not dying. She sounds dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I like to think, the trainers did such a good job, that the punch that she laid on me hopefully inspired her to win the title. So I like to feel like I played a small part in her success.
Well, jolly good. I mean, obviously, knocked you into the right frame of mind for tackling the watch industry. You're able to stand up to the punches that are the metaphorical punches that are swung at all of us on a daily basis for many years of IWC. What was it like working for such a massive group brand? That must have been a baptism of fire to go from hospitality into a completely different field. You had to learn on your feet, I guess.
Totally. I was very, very, very lucky, to be honest. I had two bosses that really accepted me for who I am. So I'm not someone who's very corporate. I really suck being behind a desk from 9 to 5. And when you try and format me too much, it's just like trying to cage an animal. So they've pretty much left me the freedom to do whatever I wanted. So I could learn the job however I felt was best for me. So it wasn't that difficult as a transition because I pretty much had the freedom to do whatever the hell I want. And the team around me as well really ensured that I had every chance of succeeding. So I felt like I could make errors. And, the good part of my time at IWC is that I started just as PR and events manager. And they actually added a section of my CV called Theo's Special Projects. And those special projects was to encourage me to be as creative as possible. So, like, wherever I saw there was a weakness in the company, I could actually take that on as a project. So I renovated, for instance, all the back offices of Bond Street, of the IWC Bond Street boutique, because it wasn't really well serviced for a hospitality point of view. So I brought that in from there. And then I saw that we were lacking in partnership. So I was creating cool marketing campaigns with like Jack Savoretti in Portofino, which was part of the Portofino collection, because his father built the church that's in the Portofino center of the village. And so I pretty much had total freedom. And that was the fun part of it. It never felt like a job until those two bosses left. And then it felt like a job. So that's why I then quickly jumped suit as well.
So I always got the impression from you that you're not a numbers guy, you're not a spreadsheets guy, you're not the sort of person that does well in that environment. I felt that because I'm exactly the same, and I always felt like, this is a guy that kind of does things from feeling. Like, you're one of those touch players. You've got the kind of skills that you can't teach. I always say, like, it's maybe one of my worst traits, but I've always been a bit dismissive of like the back office processing side of things. I'm like, look, there are people that are good at that. That's not my forte. I'm good at the other stuff. I'm going to go do that and then let the people that know how to input that into the system take care of it. The problem with that, of course, is you are wont, when you're like that, to make mistakes, to really have to learn through failure. So could you tell us a couple of times when maybe your creativity got the best of you, or you made a well-judged decision that turned out to be a disaster? Did anything from your IWC time linger in your mind as something you'd go back and change?
Going back to having the two great managers and it's not to say that I didn't do any mistakes, but because they knew where my weaknesses were, they took away everything, most things that I could screw up. So take, for instance, writing a press release. I'm someone who is quite heavily dyslexic. So trying to write, 500 words on a piece of on a piece of paper and then sending out to the press and everything, um, is a bit of a struggle for me. So I had my managers consistently covering these bases where they knew, it was not only protecting me from screwing up and putting myself in the fire line, but it was also to then, allow me to focus on what I was good at. So, with regards to IWC in itself, it's not say I'm sure I did mistakes, but because I had such a security and like what's it called? Yeah, I would say security, a safety net around me. If there was a mistake that I did, I probably didn't realize that I did it because I had these two managers covering me for it. And I forgot the second part of the question. Sorry. So that was if I did a mistake. And what was the second part? Sorry.
Would you go back and change anything? Is there anything that sort of lingers in your mind that you're like, oh, God, I can't believe I did that?
Not particularly. I think the only thing I wish I'd changed is to be a little bit more stubborn and courageous in my early years. I realized at the end of the day, when you're in the watch industry as a whole and you're working with people around you, confidence goes a long way. And I think there was projects that I could have pushed more that, for instance, I had this project I really wanted to get across the line, which was in France. We have this sailing race that goes around the world called the Vendée Globe. And with IWC being a sustainable company, or quite sustainable at the time, because they did a sustainability report they would release every 2 years. My whole marketing campaign was to sponsor this British sailor who had created a hydrogen powered engine, which he was going to use to sail around the world. And my goal was to get those hydrogen engines implemented into our HQ so that in the summer, whilst we're producing a huge amount of power with our solar panels, because we had loads of solar panels across the manufacture center, we could store that energy and then reissue it in the wintertime. And I felt there's a massive opportunity to really push IWC forward from a sustainability point of view. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to, get it across the line because I think I had too many doubts in my mind as to whether this was viable or not. But I think it's something that I should have been more courageous of, and I should have been more daring. And it's something that I really implement at Micromilspec. If I really believe in something, I go hard in until I really make sure I get the project across the line.
Probably the most famous mil-spec watches are the pilot watches by IWC from the 1930s, starting with the epic pilot watches and going into the big pilot and then Mark 10. I only had Micromilspec on my radar about a year ago. And I love mil-spec watches. I love this name. I saw designs of watches. It blew my mind. Who doesn't love Norwegians? So how can an English chap with a French name go from a brand that produces good mil-spec watches to this epic brand?
I mean, originally, to be honest as well, when I left IWC swearing to myself I would stay out of watches and never go back in, because it didn't end on a pleasant feeling for me. So suddenly my vision of the watch industry didn't disgust me, but I was just like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to focus on my real estate business. That's going to be my bread and butter going forward. And I think my brother, once again, the one who got me the job at IWC, knew that the creative side would start working inside my brain a little bit and realized that I'm getting a little bit bored. And because he was the buyer at Mr. Porter, he was bringing on Micromilspec as one of the brands. So he reached out to me and said, "Look, mate, we're bringing them live on Mr. Porter. They're looking just for a one mission from a PR support. Would you like to give it a go?" And I said, "Fine, I'll do it a go, but I want to speak to Henrik, the CEO, first, so that I get a feeling of what it's like, and then let's see how we can work together." And that's pretty much how it all kick-started. I got a really good phone call from Henrik. He was absolutely lovely to me and has been since day one. And as soon as I finished that project, in my mind, I was like, okay, cool, it was fun, but, did a good job, go back to real estate. And then Henrik called me again and said, well, look, you did a good job. I enjoy working with you. Would you consider coming on just as a PR agency? And I was like, oh, sure, I'll do that for a year, let's see what happens. And then come, I think it was January or February this year, he was like, well, look, I would like you to be my right-hand man. Would you like to come on board as a CMO? And I was like, well, I'm having a great time. So I don't really feel like this is a job. I get paid to just do fun things and being creative. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And that's how we ended up where we are now.
Going from a big group, Richemont, owning IWC, to a micro brand, although I don't dare to call them micro, but I guess it's day and night for you and you are blossoming. Begs the question, why is the micro in that brand name?
The reason why the company is called what it's called Micro, because we do small quantity of watches for various militaries across the world. Then you got Mil for military, and now to specs or specifications. So it really, those three words really goes in line as well with our logo, with our slogan, which is custom professional watches, because the whole idea is that no matter the quantity, we're able to create a specific watch for a specific purpose for a specific division. That's where the name Micromilspec comes from.
While visiting you guys at Geneva Watch Days last year, I was blown away by the quality, the team, the passion, the cool vibes, but also all the small quantities you actually make for military unit squadrons. Can you maybe elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll split into two parts. I think one, what's cool about the team that you met is that I kind of see us as in-betweeners, like the TV show in the UK. We're not specifically cool, but we're not losers. We're kind of somewhere in between. And I think the cool thing about our team, though, is that no one comes from watches. So Henrik doesn't really come from watches. He works in finance before. Our COO is a CGI specialist for TV shows, and he's won like numerous awards. So a lot of the really cool content we're able to do on our social media comes from Alex, who is a CGI expert. We've got a young designer of 25 who can do these incredible watch drawings, which before he joined us, he'd never drawn a watch before. And I think I calculated like the average age of the team is like 29 or 30. So we're kind of like a insecure. I always say to my team, we're an insecure little brand that's looking to find its confidence, and we'll get there with time and, over time. And going back to, the specifications and customizations we can do with watches. I mean, we could take the Milgraph as a good example, because the Milgraph is the watch that we designed for the Norwegian Special Forces. And the story around that is we sent them the field testing unit. They tried it on for 6 months, got some feedback as to how the watch was worn. And little by little, we started to work on a design that was specific to that unit or squadron. So we had like the bezel with little grooves inside so that they could turn it and twist it with their gloves on. You had the GMT hand because it reminded them of what time it is at home. You had the chronograph, obviously, for the team to be on the same time and synchronized. It was in titanium because they felt steel was too heavy and they wanted something a little lighter. They wanted also a stronger movement, which was Le Jouperet. So instead of using the SW200, which is what we have in most of our watches, we put in a Le Jouperet 121. And yeah, and also it was a lefty because it was to avoid having friction with the crown on the wrist. So we're really able to do proper customizations based off what the client is looking for, whether it's a military squadron or a celebrity like Erlen Haaland who did a watch with us.
So that Haaland watch, that was a one-off, right?
It was a one of one. He really wanted, before signing to Manchester City, seeing as he's a Norwegian, he wanted to be able to wear a Norwegian brand on his wrist. And the problem is once he signed that City, he technically signed with Breitling. So he wanted to make sure he got the watch before he had all these contracts, signed and across the line.
Very nice. If I remember rightly, then it has a little graphic of him in his meditative pose, which is like his old goal celebration, at least. I don't know if he still does it at City, but that was in one of the sub-dials, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's him in his little Buddha position, which was quite fun. Especially the dial in itself was the first football he ever kicked when he was 3 years old. So his father actually kept that ball. We scanned it and we then imprinted it onto the dial.
Oh, no way. How interesting. Does his dad have one? His dad was a footballer as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, his dad was a footballer at Manchester City as well. And no, he does not have one, unfortunately. It was just for Mr. Haaland himself, Junior.
All right. Okay. Very good. Well, I suppose there's some scope to make one for Alf. What's his name? Alf? Alf Inge Haaland, was it?
Very good football knowledge. Yes, that is it.
Good. Well, yeah. I'm sure he had a clash with Roy Keane at some point, so there's probably some blood or skin off one of Keane's boots that we could harvest to make a dial from for him, just to remind him of that encounter. Anyway, talking about the operational side of the brand, because there's these two distinct parts. There's the bit that works with military contractors to make special pieces for them, and then the public-facing side. How long has the brand actually existed? Did it initially exist to provide watches specifically for the military? And now what is the split of those operations? Is it 50-50 or is it more one direction than the other?
Yeah, I mean, so the company's been around for 5 years, and the core business was originally for the private market, so for the military, and that's been the bread and butter of the company for the past 4 years. And it was last year when the Mr. Porter opportunity came along that the kind of strategy of Micromilspec changed a little bit. So they saw there was an opportunity for, let's take the Hercules watch as an example. We only did 15 units for the Hercules pilots of Norway. And the conversations we had with them is, look, we'll design this watch for you, but to make it viable for us to keep it at an affordable price, we're also going to do a variation of this watch to the public. So by doing that, we can continue doing these customization projects with the military. But if they're in small enough numbers, we then can try and sell it to the public. Like with the Voyageur as well. I can't remember the exact number we had to do for the Swedish Marines, but it must have been below 30. And then we ended up releasing 25 of those models with a slight change available to the public. So, and currently today where we're at is it's a relatively 50-50 split. So to get to where we are now in 12 months' time, where 50% of our sales comes from the public, it shows that not only does the public trust us, but I think we're onto something good at the moment, and we need to continue.
I mean, you're making an exceptional quality product, and we'll come back to that in a moment in regards to the very attractive pricing thereof. But one thing that's interesting is that although the research and development that goes into new models for military factions that then eventually are released to the general public are seen, a huge amount of what you do is not seen, right? So there's all these different versions of watches that are just under the radar, a bit like Bremont used to do when Bremont would work with different squadrons. You'd find these things popping up every so often on Chrono 24 or in pre-owned marketplaces, and they'd blow your mind because it's like a dragon's egg or something special that you've never seen before. You're like, oh my god, I need to get one of those because what the hell is that? Is there a database anywhere where people can see all the projects that you've created, or are they completely secret and removed from public view?
Most of them are secret and removed from public view out of respect for the governments that hire us for those projects. We have set up intentionally a Instagram page called Micromilspec Owners, and that is for the people who are happy to share their products and wristwatches that they've customized. Then they can submit their photo to that Instagram, and then eventually we post it up there so that everyone can see the different variations of products that is going about. But that's the only place you'll be able to see it is on the Micromilspec Owners page.
It's an interesting way to go about a business to start as customizers, because a lot of existing brands, especially in the last 5 or 10 years, have felt this impetus to start customizing or personally configuring, as they prefer to say sometimes, their watches for clients because they want to scrape every possible sale. They think if they give the client some agency in the design, they're more likely to buy. It's a difficult line to walk when you're an existing brand that has previously controlled your narrative from A to Z. But in this case, you were custom build specialists working with very specific units that required very specific things from their watches. And now you are taking all of what you've learned and putting that into a product that the general public can buy. And what a product at that price point. The Milgraph in particular at around €3,500. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact number at the moment, but it's that ballpark. Is an incredible watch considering its specs. Just give us like the top line specs of this watch, including case materials, movement and whatnot. You've touched on it before, but just give us the rundown again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a grade 5 titanium case, 42 millimeters in terms of size. It's a lefty, so crowns on the opposite side with a reverse chronograph. It has a Le Jour Piré 121 movement. It has a GMT hand, and I think that is everything that I've mentioned inside of it. Oh no, you've also got the bezel that has little grooves inside of it, which allows you to twist the bezel in one direction when you have your glove still on.
It is an incredible piece. And what about the aesthetics of that piece? How did the design come about? Did you do that all in-house, or did you work with anybody else in the industry?
So technically, we worked with someone that I can't name his name, but we worked with one person externally. And if not, most of the other stuff was done internally by our own in-house designer. We try to control everything ourselves. So it's only if we have a doubt on a couple of things, we'll look for advice from other people within the industry who have been very open and receptive to helping us. But if not, most things are done internally within our own team.
So what's the team working on right now that we can expect? Will we see any more new models coming or variations of existing pieces? Because I know we've seen some interesting specials with the Milgraph already. So tell us first what's coming, and secondly, talk to us about those special edition Milgraphs.
Yeah, 100%. I think our core focus is creating a really good product at an affordable price. So I think you can expect around Geneva Watch Days a pilot collection that will be coming out with a couple of different variations of complications, which will never be, above a 3,500 or 4,000 euro price. And it's really the direction that we're trying to go in, is to make sure that you have a great movement with a well-built watch with a complication always at a relatively affordable price. So hopefully that's what's gotten us to the dance so far. And, you can see that based off the reception of the Sabotage watch that we did with James Thompson, aka Black Badger, where we did 75 editions of this quite, fun watch, which has a white dial, some orange in it as well, comes on an orange strap. Still has that titanium grade 5 case that, reminds you that it is a variation of the Milgraph. And, that watch in itself, I think in 2 weeks we sold, or 3 weeks now, we've already sold 40 models. So it's been going really, really well for us.
Well, that doesn't surprise me that it's flying. I mean, the price itself is incredible, absolutely incredible. I remember I knew about this watch in the developmental process, so I know the one person who we can't name. Bit of a shame we can't name him, but I know who we're talking about, and I knew that this thing was coming. But then to see it in hand after all those months, or well, I guess it was over a year in terms of like total development, to see it in hand, I could not believe what I was holding. And I guessed that the price, no word of a lie, I think you were there actually in Geneva. I guessed that the price would be around 7,000.
Yes.
I was way, way off. I had put it twice as expensive as it actually is. And that's a big miss, because I mean, that's speaks volumes to what you get for your money there. If you're looking for bang for buck for a technical watch that will last you for the rest of your life, then this is a great candidate. Question though, you can't have big margins because there's quality in that watch from top to bottom, not just the case, not just the way the dial is made, like the multi-component dial and then the beautiful machining on the bezel, but also the movement. Les Jeux Perret chronographs, they don't come hugely cheap. I mean, I know the build cost of that watch means that you can't be looking at much more than even max 60% markup on the physical cost of the thing. So does that preclude the possibility of retailers, or do you have a strategy for that as well?
No, we have a strategy for that with the retailers as well. I mean, at the end of the day, Henrik's vision for the brand is that he saw there was a gap within the market between a £1,500, or let's, if we want to speak in euros, like a €1,650 watch, up to a 3,500. And a lot of the conversations that him and I have had across the last 12 months is the biggest takeaway I like to, use as an example is 8 years ago, a Reverso, a good Reverso from Jaguar LeCoultre, you could probably get it for about 8.5 grand. And that exact same watch today, I think the last time I checked, it was probably around 11, 12, or even £13,000. And it's still the same movement. It's still the same watch. It's gone up 5K in price. And I think that's kind of the advantage that we have over all these other brands that are suffering, is that we're very much aware of the economical climates that everyone's going through at the moment. And that's why we're doing everything we can to create a product that, even if it eats away a little bit at our margins, that still remains affordable. And the retailers that we work with, the whole purpose of working with them is, number one, to have a point of sale where people can come and physically see the watch, and also to then start activating that market with events and, trying to look after the customer, because it's something also I very much remember from my time in Richemont. It was the quantity that they were churning out clients and customers in and out of their boutique. It was very much a numbers game. And because I come from hospitality, my thought process is always the customer has to be king in every single decision-making process. So that's why, we set up the way that we have with dazzling mind.
Can you reveal to us the volumes that we're talking here? How many pieces that you sell at the moment to the public, and how many you'd like to sell? Or is that confidential?
No, I mean, we produce roughly around 1,500 watches a year.
Okay, that was nice, clean and simple answer. Thank you very much. That's in total, including your military contracts, or is that the public exclusively?
No, that's in total. So I mean, and as it's about a 50-50 split in terms of revenue, I mean, it's going to fall somewhere between, 6 to 7, 800 for one side and 6 to 700 or 800 on the other. The exact number I'm not exactly aware of, but that's, the number that you'll be dancing around.
Okay, well, it's a good enough ballpark. It's very illustrative, at least. Do you have a goal, like a max goal of what you're trying to reach with the team being roughly the same size as it is now, or are you at that sustainable level?
I think we're still in a transitional year. Rome wasn't built in a day, and the conversations that we have with Henrik is, number one, to move the company from being a made-to-order business to actually a stock business. And that's something that we're hoping to be able to initiate in the next 12 months. So because of that, obviously the cost and investment needed to be able to get to that point is going to be quite substantial. So I think we're probably going to increase our team at the back end of this year, early next year. And it'll be probably someone based out of Switzerland or in France, someone to really help do the traveling. Just currently I'm the one hopping on a plane everywhere. And then if I continue at this rate, my partner's going to leave me. So I'm trying to find someone who can help piggyback off that and help support us on that side and make sure that I'm not the only creative person in the office, because there's some point or another I will stagnate. So I need someone else who can add that little injection of fun into the company.
Oh, well, if you need any help, let me know. I love to fly, and I'm a big fan of Norway. Moving on from that, by the way, you got my email address. You know where to send the job application. You mentioned gaps in the market, right? You identified a price point gap between 1,650 euros and 3,500 euros. I do not contest that that gap exists. I agree that it does exist. But my question to you is somewhat more philosophical. Gaps will always open up in different parts of the industry as it moves and shifts, and certain brands try and accelerate from their traditional price point to something new, and others will be left scrabbling to fill those voids. We've seen it happen with some of the mainstream brands. We've seen, for example, Rolex go and add touch for the common working man, and we've seen Omega try and follow suit and opening up a door for Longines to sort of slide into where Omega used to be, and Hamilton to slide in went to where Longines used to be, etc., etc. My question is, does a gap always need to be filled? Is there not a moment in an industry where certain price points are doing well and certain price points are doing badly for whatever reason? And there are plenty of good reasons for both of those things. And case in point, right now, we seem to be in a moment where everybody that's selling watches for tens of thousands, so not even just five figures, not just into the teens, I mean like 20,000 plus maybe, they're doing okay. Anybody under 1,000 also seems to be doing okay. There seems to be like a moment there for these two extreme ends of the industry, the ultra accessible and the ultra moneyed, to have a lot of success. But that middle bracket there, the more traditional luxury watch market from, say, 1,500 to 6,000, or maybe 1,500 all the way up to 10, is a bit of a dogfight. Like, there's a lot of brands trying to take away that space that has, quite rightly, emerged. You filled it, you're having success, your volume is low, relatively speaking, your quality is high, your bang for buck is through the roof. I get why you're doing well. But what do you think about that as a concept? Do you think that gaps always need to be filled, or do you think sometimes gaps vacate for a reason?
No, I think at the end of the day, where we are at today, for me, the reason why that we're seeing so many brands suffering a little bit within the watch industry is I think the customer has been taken for granted for a very, very, very long time. And that gap of that 1,500 to, three and a half grand is you think less when you're making a purchase around that amount compared to anything above that. You start thinking about how much you make a month and whether or not you can fit that in. So I think with regards to filling the gap, I think, yes, I think it's essential to see an opportunity and go for it. With regards to competition, yes, it's a very highly competitive market within that price point. But I think where we are very lucky is that, number one, I know most brands say this, but really, I cannot accentuate enough how much we put the customer at the center of our decision, making process. From customization of the monogram, where they can customize, certain elements of that watch and give them the freedom to be able to do it, like putting a logo or changing the name of the watch, and then putting an engraving on the back. We're bringing in a little bit of the fun and putting the client into the driver's seat, unlike most other brands. And on top of that, where we like to say we put the customer at the center of it, is I travel a lot and I regularly email everyone who is either on a waiting list or has either purchased a watch or who might have come and seen us at a watch fair and it isn't sure. I email every single one of these people if I'm in a location nearby them, and I invite them out for a meal, and they get to have time with the CMO of a watch brand. And very readily accessible. And at the end of the day, it's very rare that with a watch brand that you can have so much interactions with a CEO and a CMO. And, even to take the UK as a market, I just did hands-on horology. Every single one of those people who, put their names onto my list, I'm organizing a pub drinks at the end of the year, all on me. No one has to buy a watch or anything. They just turn up. I'll bring some watches of what we released that year for them to have a play around. And they get to have a moment with a brand where they can feel, a little bit special because they have access to the watches where some of them would have been sold out, and they can take some photos. They can ask questions of what, we might be releasing next year, which I'll probably show them. There'll be very much an open and accessibility, which I can do it for the moment, which is great. Hopefully I can always continue doing that because I think it really works. But I really want to make sure that when someone buys a Micromilspec watch, they feel that they're part of a community and they're part of an environment that is always striving to do something and always has something going on.
I would love to run down the collection with you, Theo. But before we do so, I am a big fan of Scandi design. Would you personally label Micromilspec's design DNA as Scandi design?
Not really. I mean, the fun thing is that when we launched the Milgraph, I had half the people who called it an IWC Porsche design from the 1980s, and the other half that called it a Vacheron Overseas Everest. So every time our watches have been compared to someone, it's never been compared to a Scandi brand. It's always been compared to a Richemont brand, which I like to think, that's a very good compliment. And so therefore, I think going back to the customization, our job is to kind of be a little bit like a lizard and change the color of our skin based off what the opportunity is and what designs we need to do. So if we're working with the Swedish Marine Corps, then we'll probably do a very Scandi design watch for them. But if we're working with the Australians and they want a kangaroo and something, I have no idea what with a boomerang, then yeah, sure, mate. But we'll good day all over that.
So you said you take it as a compliment. Many brands get offended if newly launched products get compared to other brands. You basically don't. Did I understand that correctly?
100%. Number one, for two reasons. Number one, as long as you're talking about me, then fantastic, because it means that we've done something right. And I think no matter what, anyway, there's so many watches that have been designed over the last 100 or 160 or 70 years. Everyone is always going to find something to compare it to, no matter what you launch. If you look hard enough, long enough, and you don't go out of your house enough, you'll find a comparison somewhere with another brand, with another watch. So for me, it's really not a bother. If and to be compared to Vacheron IWC is the biggest compliment I can get.
Interesting. And it's actually very refreshing. So thank you for that. Milgraph is fantastic. Congrats. I love the collab with Rob's mate, Black Badger. Walk us through that project, please. Project Sabotage.
So I'll leave the product design and all of that stuff to James and Henrik. At the end of the day, we wanted to do a variation of the Milgraph. Number one, because we were out of Milgraphs to sell. We only did, I think it was 50 annual productions a year, and we had over 1,052 names on our waiting list. So we thought to ourselves, well, we need to find a way to bring this down because we're kind of stuck with the production limit with the Milgraph. And that's where Project Sabotage came along. So it was James who came up with the idea of a Luke Skywalker Star Wars dial, hence why it's, orange and white. And then from my perspective, the marketing campaign, I don't know why, but I had an idea that popped into my head of kind of bringing to light some real comments that were used by CEOs and creating a little universe around that. So, you'll see a lot of pirate flags in our marketing campaign because that's a little wink to the CEO of Rolex, who said all these little micro-independent watch brands who install themselves around the Palex Glow Watches and Wonders are pirates. So that's why you've got, everything has a purpose within that. And that's why the bad guy in our world that we've created is called the Crown's Guard, because he has kind of like a similar crown to Rolex on the back of it. We originally actually came up with a guy called Lord Lufts, who was a little bit naughty to take the piss out of Nautilus. And we wanted to use comments, from the CEO of Patek saying, everyone who criticizes the Cupitus is people who can't afford it. So we really wanted to create this obnoxious, really obese, fat cartoon character who was completely disconnected from reality and, create a little world around that. But then we pivoted and decided to create a character called the Grand Psycho to do a little bit of a wink at Grand Seiko. Even though I love Grand Seiko, so I can't criticize them at all. It's just the name works really well.
The Milgraph is hands down my favorite, and I want to hear later on what Rob's favorite Micromilspec watch is. What really spoke to me was also the original field testing unit that retails at $1,595.
Yes. 100%. The field testing unit is actually the very first watch that we produced. It's all in its name, field testing unit. It's a watch that's supposed to be tested in the field, and it was originally a prototype watch. So if someone wanted, start a project with us, we would send that watch off. They would try it on for 6 months, and then we'll get the watch back. We'll analyze how the watch was worn, and also we'll get feedback from the person wearing the watch. What we needed to change. So, for instance, if it's too heavy, move to titanium. If he broke the movement, find something better. He wants a chrono. He wants, a lefty, and blah, 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 blah. And that's where the whole story came from, with the field testing unit. And it was only when we were working with Mr. Porter that the personal shoppers were like, we love that watch. That has to be on our website. And then we were like, oh, well, wonderful. We've kind of stumbled onto something that is really successful. And the field testing unit, I think, is now our second best selling watch within the collection. So you have a good eye on picking your favorites, because the Milgraph being our best and then the field testing unit, you're on to our two best sellers.
To answer your curiosity, Alon, the Milgraph is by far and away my favorite. I mean, I am a chronograph kind of guy, as you know. It's my favorite complication, and I just can't get past how brilliantly this has been done. It's just a great concept. It's extremely legible. The dial is characterful. It's brilliant to have struck that balance where you've got an almost joyous use of curved markers and indicators without it seeming whimsical in any way, but also highly, highly legible. Great on the wrist. The left-hand crown is brilliant. I enjoy a left-hand crown because I like to kayak a lot, and having a crown on the left-hand side is ideal for that because you have a little bit additional wrist flexion. So that's my number one. I also like the field testing unit. I think it's very clean. I think very crisp. I love them on the rubber straps. I think that's how the watches look best, but then I'm also a fan of rubber straps in general, not just rubber like items of foam. Just to be clear.
I always thought you were a bit kinky, Rob.
I am a bit kinky, but it's too warm for the rubber, And moving on swiftly, you're a creative guy. We know that. We can see that in your campaigns. We can see that in the way that you approach the industry and like where your focus lies on what needs to be changed to provide a better customer experience, a more holistic delivery of a brand to the end consumer. But have you ever designed a watch? Have you really made changes to watch designs that have been evolving around you in the past? And if not, or maybe as well as, would you like to do that in the future? And do you have some ideas of what you think would be a great commercial product?
So I have no idea how to design a watch, but how it will work with Henrik and myself is, for instance, we kind of got our 2027 collection sorted. And all I said to him is, I want a specific material that I would like to use for that collection, being forged carbon. And I said, well, look, go off and start working on design. I kind of know what I have inside my head. I don't know how to communicate it. And then he'll come back to me showing me various different designs as to, is this what I meant? And then little by little, we'll start refining the details as to what direction we're going to go in. And even for, next year, well, actually, no, one of the crazy ideas that I had was originally I wanted to create a floating watch for the kite surfing community because I'm a kite surfer myself and I often go kite surfing with a watch. But I've never actually had a watch that was built for purpose. And fun fact is most pro kite surfers, when they compete with a watch on because they have 10 minutes out on the water and they turn on the chronograph and they actually use the chrono to see how much time they have to compete in their heat to do as many, moves as possible and jump as high as possible in the air. So my goal originally was to do a floating watch for the kite surfer community. And we started the same thing, working on the design a little bit, launch R&D to see how this could all come together. And we kind of, tick board back and forth, based off our kite surf wing or, the actual kite itself looks, that needs to be the sort of start of the watch. So I can't draw, but I'll have ideas to then communicate to the design team as to what I'm trying to get to.
I mean, this is interesting. It's, of course, very niche, but then really all of the greatest and most interesting complications are, and that's kind of the point of watchmaking itself, is kind of esoteric and unnecessary. But certainly very interesting. I've never seen a kite surfing watch before. We've had regatta timers for people tacking back and forth before the start of a race and using their watches to indicate exactly when they should go. What about a 10-minute chronograph display? Either a chronograph central minute hand that could be geared to go around the dial once every 10 minutes, or the sub-dial you have at 6 on the Milgraph, geared up to go around the sub-dial once in 10 minutes, like a specific complication for that actual use. What about that?
That was the exact communication I had with our watchmaker, which I wish I filmed his face when I told him. I was like, I want a chronograph, but a slow one. And he was like, well, how slow? I was like, it's going to take 10 minutes to get around. And he was like, what the fuck are you on about? And I was like, no, don't worry. I'm onto something here. Trust me. We call kite surfing the Gulf of the Sea because when you get into the sports, you need 10 grand or 15 grand to buy all the equipment if you're going to buy it new. And most kite surfers love kiting with a watch. So I know that there's a niche that I can tap into that, thankfully, there's probably not that many kite surfers in Switzerland because even though you have the lakes, it's not ideal to surf on a lake. So I kind of hope that this is a niche that I can attack that in the future, which maybe we are, maybe we're not. And maybe you might see something in the next 12 months around this. But yeah, that's the whole reason behind it.
I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. I mean, it can start off as a kite surfing watch. It can become something else. It'd be much easier to time your boiled eggs with a chronograph hand that goes around the dial once every 10 minutes than once every 30. That would be brilliantly useful. And I mean, the Rolex Explorer 2 started out as a spelunking watch, and you don't meet spelunkers on the street corner very often, do you? So, I mean, if you make a watch for a particular community, it'll be adopted by other people thereafter. I'm sure the 10-minute thing could be really useful for loads of people, and it can be done. Your watchmaker is probably right to respond in the, how should we say, expletive-laden way that they did, but at the same time, it's not the most complicated thing to ask. Can you just gear this chronograph to run 10 minutes? Okay, it's not straightforward, as in, like, you can't just click your fingers and do it in a day, but the development is pretty easy.
No, 100%. And it's kind of the direction that we want to bring the brand going forward is not just pivot away slightly from the military, but it's to really create, when we say custom professional watches, it's not just for the military, but it's for people who are professionals in their own field. So we're exploring, free climbing. We're looking at kite surfing, maybe motocross. And we kind of want to create this Red Bull, the watch industry type of branding, which is that we have all these daredevil types of ambassadors who are experts within their field, and they have a watch that has been specifically built for a purpose for their own domain.
You know what I've always wanted? I've never said this on air before, but I'm going to send you a proposal for a special edition after this episode anyway, and it's kind of a rudimentary version of what I'm about to describe to you. But as I mentioned, I like kayaking, and I also spend a lot of time walking in hills, like elevated areas. And one of the few things you have to watch out for are storms coming in. And so I always gravitate towards chronographs with telemeters on the bezel rather than tachymeters or pulsometers or anything like that. I love a telemeter. I love being able to tell how far away the center of a storm is from where I am. And I also like chronographs. Now, one of the problems with a chronograph from a sporting perspective is you tend to start it when you start whatever endeavor you are endeavoring to complete. So if you're about to go on a big hike, you might start the chronograph at the start to time your total journey, which would render the telemeter generally useless when the storms start rolling in because you'd have to stop the chronograph to get it back to zero. So the first workaround I thought of was having a rotatable telemeter bezel that you could line up with the running chronograph seconds without having to stop the chronograph as soon as you saw the lightning. But then what I would really, really, really love more than anything would be a sub-dial on the dial that was a telemeter sub-dial, a secondary seconds hand that could be started while the initial chronograph was running by a different pusher, like a pusher at 10 o'clock or something. So when you see the flash of lightning, without having to stop the chronograph, which preferably would be a screw-down pusher so you wouldn't be able to stop it by accident, you press the telemeter chrono and you get a distance readout on the 9 o'clock sub-dial that's specifically reserved for that. So once you've succeeded in turning your watchmaker's hair white with your kite surfing idea, ensure that it will all drop out when you hand them that one, please.
With pleasure. At the end of the day, we're a custom professional watch company, Rob. So if you need a specific watch, I'm sure we can make it happen.
See, that is what I like to hear, a man that's willing to go above and beyond to satisfy the consumer. Look, Theo, we could probably talk for another hour on the nuances of Micromilspec because it's an incredibly interesting brand, one that's doing things that others aren't doing and doing them in an accessible way, which is just a brilliant thing for the watch community. But I'm going to let you go now because we have talked very fluidly, very quickly, very easily for over 50 minutes, and it felt like 5. So before we get out of hand, I will thank you for your time on the show and hope that you will come back in the future and at the very least, come and see us in Geneva, because we'll be there as an official media partner of Geneva Watch Days recording, and let's do round 2 in person. How does that sound?
Mate, with absolute pleasure. I really look forward to seeing you, and I loved being, on this show. So thank you very much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
To everybody in the Real Time Show network, if you've got questions for Theo, then please do get in touch via the usual channels. You can contact either Alon, David, or me via our email addresses, Rob, Alon, or David at therealtime.show, via the official Instagram handle at therealtime.show, or via the contact form on the official website, www.therealtime.show. We'll be back soon with more top quality watch content and conversations with the industry's innovators. Until then, stay safe and keep on ticking.